The Art and Industry of Business and Living podcast, discussing conscious choices around business, money, life and living, and creating a greater future for you and the planet.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Art and Industry of Business and Living. You are with Simone, your host, and Merry Christmas, because today in Australia is Christmas Day, the US it's Christmas Eve, and they say that, you know what, hardly anyone listens to a podcast on Christmas Day, but oh well, for those people out there who are trying to find, you know, something different to do than hanging out with your family, we're here. We've got your back. So we have a few of the Joy Business Dazzle on here today. Now, one of the things that we've looked at this year is we changed everything up in the business. It's like we created basically new systems and new infrastructures to create something greater. So it's one of the things I would like to invite you to have a look at with your business is it currently working with the system and the infrastructure you have set up, or is it time to change something? Now, most people don't really desire change, even though they talk about it. It's one of the, the hardest things for people to choose. But what we did was I looked at it and went, all right, so everybody that was working, on our Dazzle, our team, I was doing Joy Business classes. I was the only one. And then we started getting Joy Business facilitators. So we had to, work with that. And then I started doing Choice of Possibilities classes. And then I'll be doing, relationships done different classes in 2019. And the arms of the business kept expanding, but we had the same people doing the same thing. And they also had other, pieces and parts of the business that were expanding. So everything was expanding. It was like it was busting at the sides. And so rather than actually looking at the moment when you go, okay, is it time to change something here? How many of you keep a hold of the business as it is and don't allow it to expand and exponentialize the way the business actually desires? So first thing, everything at that is time for Godzillion, destroy and uncreate it, and know when to choose to change something. Right and wrong, good and bad, pock and pot, all nine, shorts, boys and beyond. So we grabbed a few of the new Dazzle to come on here and wish you Merry Christmas, etc. So we've got Marnie Barenko. Hey, Marnie.
Hello.
Say hello.
Yes.
So
hello.
Marnie is she's actually been on some of my shows before. She is my wonderful, amazing assistant based in the US, and she does so many different things within Access. And one of the things that she is taking over now too is sort of taking on that, lead head role of Joy Business. And then we have Leandra, who is totally fresh blood. She was an intern for 3 months, is based in Dublin, and is actually in Brazil for a month. Is that right, Leandra?
Yes, it is. Hi, everyone. Hi, Simone. Thank you for having me. Yes, I'm the newbie in the team.
Some of the fresh blood.
Yes.
And then we have, not to say it's old blood, but we have one of my very favorite people, Melanie Mead, she's so impressed me with how she basically had a job that she didn't like and chose to leave, not knowing where she was going to go to. And I'm going to say self-trained herself on pretty much everything. And I love the way Melanie will always Google something if she doesn't know it and start looking at how to create something rather than waiting for someone else to create it. So Melanie has been a part of Joy Business Dazzle for a pretty long time now, and I'm grateful that she's still here. Hi, Melanie.
Hey, Simone. I'm grateful too.
And yes, she speaks like a leprechaun. So it's good. It's the luck of the Irish. And then we have the wonderful, amazing Lauren Marie, who is a Joy Business facilitator as well, lives on the same street as me. So it's not called stalking when we see each other a lot. It's just called we live on the same street. And I've worked with Lauren in a lot of different areas. And we wanted to invite her to play with us in Joy Business because she's one of the most creative people I've ever met as well. So welcome, Lauren.
Yay! And Joy Business is one of my favorite things on the planet. So how's that?
Awesome. Oh, I'm happy. That makes me happy. And one of the things that we decided to do with the new Dazzle sort of energy is we wanted people to wake up sort of thinking about, okay, what can I contribute to the JCS? What can I contribute to this business? And what can the business contribute to me? And that's what it should be. So it's, just because you were doing something yesterday doesn't mean that that's what you should be doing today. If it's time for change, so I guess we're looking at time for change here is the running theme. So time for change here too. I sort of wanted to hand this over to the wonderful Miss Amazing Marnie Barenko to follow the energy here and see what's up for this podcast on Christmas Day.
Thank you, Simone. I'm excited to get to chat with these amazing ladies. And as Simone has just said, all of them are just such a contribution to everything that's being created. And since change is the theme of the day, let's look at that a little more, because Christmas is sort of this time where we're looking at the end of one year and the beginning of the next. And it can be interesting because there's a lot of points of view about setting goals. And we tend to look at our life and sort of evaluate, how did I do in business last year? How are things with my relationships? How are things with money? Just pick a topic. But we oftentimes, at least in this reality, look at things from the judgment point of view to measure ourselves. Do we measure up to where we wanted to be and what we wanted to create? And then from the place of judgment, we set these goals and try to fix what we have decided wasn't good enough. So everything that is, because that's really kind of yucky, could we destroy and uncreate that? Right,
yes.
Wrong, good and bad, POD and POC, all nine shorts, boys and beyonds. And what if there was actually a way easier, more joyful way to go about creating and choosing the change that you would like to have in your life? So if you were to look at, I'm going to ask the ladies that are on the podcast here with me, if you were to look at 2019 and what you desire for next year, what is the way that you go about asking and choosing that rather than the judgment that's so familiar to a lot of us?
Yeah, one of the things that I am making a demand that I start to look at more too is choice and creation. Because one of the tools and access that we talk about is, 10-second increments of choice. So if each 10 seconds you choose something different, it's like, so, and realizing that when you make a choice of how much that actually creates your future, every single choice you make creates your future, and if you change your mind, then you've made a new choice. The thing is, you've got to acknowledge that you've made a new choice so that you can allow more possibilities to show up, rather than actually thinking that you've made this choice and then you've stuck to that, which then becomes a decision. So what if every time you make a choice, it's like you change the future, everything, and not just in business, with everything, the way you are today. I mean, you know what? I live across the road from the beach. If I walk across the road to the beach and I'm grumpy at people, or if I walk across the road to the beach and I see people and I'm like, morning, and have a smile on my face, that choice, what does that create in the world? Not just for me, for everyone around me. It's like, so if you start to look at, and that's what I really want to look at, is each and every single choice I make, what future is it creating? And I'm not saying that, you have to walk around being happy all the time. If you're going to be angry, if you're going to be frustrated, it's like, friggin' enjoy it, because I do. It's like, I love it when I get, cranky or frustrated or angry, but I enjoy it. It's like, what if you could enjoy every single choice that you made? And I would just love to run one clearing to go with this too, because you've got to get that choice create, okay? So, and ask, if I choose this, what future am I creating with this? So today, Christmas Day, Christmas Eve, if I choose this, whatever that may be, what future am I creating with this? So what energy, space, and consciousness can you be that would allow you to choose what other people would never choose with total ease? And everything that is, times a godzillion, we destroy and uncreate it. Right and wrong, good and bad, POC and POD, all nine, shorts, boys and beyond. So I'll run it one more time. What energy, space, and consciousness can you be that would allow you to choose what other people would never choose with total ease? And everything that is, times a godzillion, we destroy and uncreate it. Right and wrong, good and bad, POC and POD, all nine, shorts, boys and beyond. And the interesting thing is, it's like, what if your choice was just to be happy today? And how many other people around you are not allowing themselves to even just choose happiness, to choose joy, to choose gratitude? And what if you started with that? What invitation could that be for greater possibilities to show up in your life, and also a greater invitation for other people? So what changes could you make this year by the choices that you make?
I love that. And you brought up another thing, Simone, which was about acknowledging. And would you say a little bit more about that? We tend to, going back to that judgment thing, look to create change based on judging ourselves rather than acknowledging what we have created. So if you find yourself stuck in that, can you say more about that acknowledging piece?
Well, it's interesting. It's like it's acknowledging all your choices that you made, acknowledging everything that you be, because we're so quick. I mean, I was having a conversation yesterday with some friends of mine, and I was so quick to acknowledge the greatness of them and to see that with so much clarity. And yet, when I looked at myself, I wasn't as willing to acknowledge how great I was. So what if you even just started with that? And many, many, many years ago, I used the tool of the 5 elements of intimacy, and I would write them down on a piece of paper, on a sticky note, and put them in my bathroom. And yesterday I thought, you know what, I'm going to start doing that again, of the 5 elements of intimacy, and pock and potting everywhere that I wasn't willing to be that with myself, which was being an allowance of myself, the trusting of myself, being grateful for myself, being honoring of myself, vulnerability, there you go.
Yes.
And be willing to be vulnerable with myself. And so at the end of each day, when I'm brushing my teeth or whatever, it's like I look up and I pock and pot everywhere that I haven't been willing to be those 5 elements of intimacy with me. Because if you start with that, then you will start to acknowledge everything that you be. It's like, you know what, you might stumble and fall. It's like, pick yourself up again. It's like, well, it's a good thing I'm cute because sometimes I'm not very smart. And move on. Another choice, another 10 seconds. So, but start acknowledging everything that you created. And you mentioned money right at the beginning, to money, and as one of the things that people start to look at. And how many of you are looking at the money you have not created, and you start to calibrate your success by the amount of money you don't have in your bank account, rather than actually, acknowledging everything that you have created and being grateful for that. Because gratitude will always create more. Judgment will never create more. It will only ever create less.
So on that, I would love to ask everyone who's on the call joining us today, and those of you that can respond to this, what's something that you would like to acknowledge that you have chosen over this past year, or something about you that you're grateful for? And I can kick it off. And it's interesting because, as Simone said, she was noticing how it was so easy to acknowledge the greatness in everyone else. And we can get weird when it comes to saying out loud something that we've done that we're grateful for about ourselves, or something we've chosen that we've created, because we have all of these points of view about, not being selfish or not being prideful or not being bragging too much or whatever. But until we start to actually look at it and acknowledge it, that's the invitation to have more of it. So one of the things I would start with acknowledging that I chose this year was I was really about, beginning February, March of this year, doing this thing of I don't actually have time to create all the things that I would like to create. So I'm doing things for joy of business, and I'm doing things for access. And it would be nice to facilitate. That would be fun, but I don't have time. And so that was always the thing that fell to the bottom of the list. And then I actually asked Gary Douglas, the founder of Access Consciousness, a couple of questions, and saw how I was really limiting myself with the lie that I was believing. And so made the choice and actually the demand to say, you know what, no more excuses. I'm going to include that in the creation of my life. I'm going to choose it. So that's one thing that I would say I chose that was different than what I was choosing before. So Leandra, can I ask you, what's something that you have chosen or created this year that you would like to acknowledge?
Oh my God, definitely being here. This, for me, it's the highlight of my whole year. It's having chose to apply for the internship, on Facebook, and having created this space and having done internship and, learned so much and learning and creating and being part of this. So proud of myself and, so happy that I'm here and that I could, acknowledge that I created that and that I'm, among people like you. And also I'd like to say that from, Christmas, thinking of Christmas and all that, it's also adding to my life. It's, all of life come to me, ease, joy, and glory. That's definitely something that I'm bringing on more, ease, joy, and glory, anything that I'm doing and anything that I can apply with. Definitely that one.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. Melanie, how about you? What's something you would like to acknowledge that you've chosen this year?
Yeah, for me, it's a funny one. It's one I really looked at recently was, as Simone said at the start, in my previous jobs or whatever I had before, and basically my whole life, I tried to make sense to everyone else, and I actually wasn't allowing myself to actually kind of tap into that creative capacity that I do have. So this year I just literally acknowledged how different I am, and I'm actually going to allow myself to create the way that I know how and stop trying to make sense to everyone else, because that's the tricky part. Was when I was trying to explain something, or, you know, growing up or whatever in school or in work, like when you're trying to make everyone else understand something and everyone's looking at you like you've 10 heads, it's just not going to work. It just doesn't work. So 2019 for me is going to get a whole lot more creative, and I'm not even sure what it's going to look like. It could be a bit of a stumble and fall. I'm not even sure, but I get there's so much more to the way that I create that I haven't been allowing myself to create, purely because it didn't make sense to everyone else, and it shouldn't. It doesn't even make sense to me. How am I going to make sense to other people? So it's kind of one that makes me giggle a little bit, but I've grown so much in the last 2 years of, you know, working with Joy Business and all the other projects that I've been on. I'm really interested to see what actually shows up next.
That makes me smile, Melanie. It's
I know.
Here. I'm like, bring it on. And, you know, I just want to add a little bit to that, because that makes me smile so much, because Melanie is asking to be more of her. And before this conversation, before we're recording this podcast, Marnie was asking me about working with her new assistant and saying, I'm not sure what to put her on. And I realized as soon as I asked her some questions and she started to play with it and you extrapolate, she actually knew. And it was interesting, because it's like, how much do you already know that you don't acknowledge, again, that word, acknowledge that you know, because it's not validated in this reality. Whereas that energy that Melanie talking about, that it's like, ooh, what's going to be created that has never been created before, because we're creating beyond this reality. And what if your business was creating beyond this reality? What would you choose?
Yes, and the piece that you said, Melanie, about the willingness to be different. So if you're listening to this Christmas Eve or Christmas Day and you're around your family, sometimes the willingness to be you and be different can be challenging with the expectations and all the things that are going on. So what if you actually gave yourself the gift of the willingness to be you, even if it's different than anyone else or their expectations? Lauren Marie, would you like to answer that question? Something you'd like to acknowledge about this year?
I'd say I've really been asking to change where I haven't let people in and to help me, and to actually allow other people to contribute. And it's one of those things, like, it can be really, for me, it has been really hard to not just do it all myself. And I've realized, like, as I've been asking to create more in the world, I've hit a place where I had to. It was like, okay, I can no longer do all of this myself, and just allowing other people to, whether it's to help me change something or to help me do something or to ask them for assistance. And what's required to do that has been, like, really a level of vulnerability and receiving. So I'd like to have even more of that next year. And it's been really intense, but really amazing, like, what's been showing up.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'll have more of that too. Yeah, Simone was saying just a bit ago with bringing on an assistant, and it brings up this whole thing of, well, I can do it by myself. I know how to do it by myself, but I actually can't. You actually, like you just said, you hit the place of, oh, for this to grow and expand requires me to invite someone in and to actually ask for help. So I'll have more of that too.
I want to add too that it's not about going to the conclusion, because that's what I see so often people do in business. They go, oh, well, I can't do all of this, so, you know, blah, blah, blah. And then they start to either limit the business or they limit themselves, rather than going, okay, so who or what else can I add to the business today? Because, I mean, it's not as though Lauren starts cutting things out of her life, but when you add something, then things can grow bigger. It's like exactly what we did with the dazzles we work with. It wasn't about going, oh, no, we can't do anything else. We can't add any more projects. It was like, all right, it's like chaos. Not havoc, chaos. Like, you know, how much chaos can you instill into your business today that allows more possibilities to show up? And it's interesting, I remember when I first started working with my first assistant ever that I had locally, and I was like, how the hell am I ever going to do this? And I think, Marnie, we need to do a podcast on working with assistants. It might help some of the staff we work with, yeah. Because I was like, it's just easier to do it myself. And there's so many businesses that could create so much more cash flow if you were willing to actually receive some assistance. And I remember I started by going, okay, so what am I about to do now? I'm going to the post office. Okay, someone else could go to the post office and get the post. And then I was like, well, someone else could, open it. Oh, they could probably even pay the accounts. They could probably do the filing. And it just started with the smallest of things, and then it kept expanding. And I remember Gary Douglas, the founder of Access, said to me, you know what, Simone, one day you'll end up having about 10 assistants around the world, which is pretty much where I'm at the moment if I look at, everyone who helps in all these different areas. So it's an interesting scenario to give up that control in the conclusion, be like, okay, so that now what next?
And it contributes so much to the person that's stepping in and assisting. When you invited me into all of the things, it's expanded my life so much as well. So like you said, when there's the asking of the question and then the choosing that, it's a co-contribution, which is amazing. So would you like to answer that question, Simone, something you'd like to acknowledge about this year that you've chosen?
Oh, Jesus. I'd like to acknowledge the courage that I've had.
Yeah.
Because my life has been, someone said to me the other day, can you do a video of the highlights of 2018? I was like, oh my God, are you kidding me? It's like I've done so many things. And this year, like the courage I had to step up on stage with Gary Douglas and do my first Choice of Possibilities class in Brazil. And then in Los Angeles to do my first one with Dane here. And then go off and do Choice of Possibility classes, on my own around the world in countries like Romania and Russia, etc., which was just so grateful for that. My first one in Turkey on my own solo was live streamed because Gary couldn't end up going to Turkey, so I had to jump in and do that. The courage also to change, my personal life with, ending an 8-year relationship with one of my best friends. There's so many things like that I would say that I'm incredibly grateful for the courage I've had to keep moving forward and keep choosing something different, even though most people would not choose to change something. They would more choose to stay in where they were so that they knew it and it was familiar. So I'm acknowledging the courage that I've had this year. And what else is possible?
Yes. So we have courage and we have choosing more and we have letting people in and asking for help and stepping up and the willingness to be different. Those are some of the things, and I bet we could go on for hours talking about things that we could acknowledge. So our invitation to you this holiday season is to take a minute and just to ask yourself, what is it that I could acknowledge about me? What is it that I have chosen this year? What is it that I have created? And if you start to find yourself in the holiday season, going into the new year, in that place of judging you or scrutinizing you or measuring you and comparing to someone else, what if you just stopped and said, what is it about me that I could choose to be grateful for right now? And what question could I ask to change all of this? So thank you for joining. And we wish you a very, very happy holiday season. And what would it take for 2019 to be your best year yet?
Yes.
Thanks for joining.
Woo! Thanks, everyone. And don't forget to check out accessjoybusiness.com and find a Joy Business facilitator near you. So anything else anyone else want to add before we hang up and go drink and be merry? It's Christmas.
Yay.
Happy Christmas.
I just want to add one thing. It's like every time we have a little conversation or we do a podcast or a Home Times radio show, it's so amazing to work with all of you, awesome people, and the difference that you be in the world. And apparently I'm having a tearful holiday season. I seem to cry a lot, but it's actually just like overwhelming gratitude of what we're all choosing to be and what it's creating.
I agree. Thank you. How did we get so lucky? And what else is possible?
Yes.
Yeah, cool. All right. Well, thanks, everyone. And
thanks, guys.
We'll see you somewhere in the world. Bye-bye.